Hi, welcome back to Need More Coffee, Please, with Cisco and Melissa. I'm Melissa.
I'm Cisco.
Thank you so much for being here. And today we are going to talk a little bit more about the story of us. So, kind of where we came from, who we are. I know we went over that a little bit like in the first episode, but it was really brief. And we just thought, for those of you who don't know us or just coming on here, it'll give you a better background of who we are. So, I think we're going to start off with our childhoods, and we'll
Yes.
have Cisco go first.
Okay. So I grew up, was born and raised in the great state of New Jersey, in a town called Elizabeth specifically. Definitely more of the inner city vibe than where we've lived at afterwards, thank God. Um, and made it out of there alive, obviously. Was blessed to grow up in a Christian household with both my parents. And I didn't really become a Christian or started walking with the Lord myself till I was about a senior in high school. Is when I accepted the Lord, and prior to that, I was just going to church and kind of playing along with my parents. So I was blessed and fortunate enough to go through that. I had a fairly good childhood, as it goes, especially compared to a lot of my peers who lived in that same town, unfortunately. And I went to a Christian high school. Just for high school. Prior to that, I went to public school. Then I graduated there 2 years after I graduated high school in 1997. Yes, that's a ways back. I went to Calvary Chapel Bible College along with my brother, who's 2 years younger than me. We went to Calvary Chapel Bible College in the fall of 1999. And yes, that was last century. I get that. But that's where I met this lovely lady during that stint there.
Yeah, so I am from a little town called Paradise, California. Uh, Complete opposite of culture and everything of where he grew up.
Geographically,
So yeah.
culturally, everything. Yes.
So it was a little town in Northern California, kind of in the woods. Um, and yeah, I was born and raised there. Grew up in the same house on the same street, obviously. And yeah, so I am the youngest of five kids. And our dad passed away when I was 2 years old of leukemia. So, my mom was left with five kids to raise by herself. My oldest siblings were like early teens, 12 and 13, I think, at the time when he passed away. So, she had a lot on her plate. I went to a Christian school up until high school, so pretty much the opposite of him. My mom worked as a secretary at that school, to enable us to be able to go there. And then in high school, I went to the public high school in the town. And I started walking with the Lord probably the end of my junior year. And at that time, I decided to homeschool my senior year. I was just kind of over, the high school, and I was really, but I think by that time I knew I was going to be attending the Calvary Chapel Bible College. So I kind of got a jump start on some of the classes my senior year. So, yeah.
Yeah, so fall of 99, we both went to Bible college. Not a coincidence by any means. And it was definitely a big culture shock for me going from New Jersey, living in the shadow of New York City, about 20 minutes away, to all of a sudden going to Southern California. Marietta is kind of a little bit more inland, a little bit more in the desert. So it's definitely a big culture shock for me. But but I loved it, and my brother went there as well. Like I said, and it was good to have somebody I knew, obviously, there with me, so I wasn't completely alone. And the Lord blessed it, for sure. And it was towards the end of our first semester
Mhm.
that we met. Kind of, we just like had real brief introductions.
Well, I think it was the middle of the semester that we
Was it the
met, but
middle?
we started kind of um, hanging out towards the end.
Mm,
So yeah,
mm-hmm. Sure.
but yeah, we met middle of the semester, but we literally said like two words to each
Yeah,
other.
yeah. It was definitely not a love at first
No.
sight. For sure. And then we hung out a little bit, yeah, the latter part of that semester.
Mhm.
And then we went home for winter break. And then I remember talking to her on AOL Instant Messenger, if any other Gen Xers know that. A lovely program. She was at her sister's, so we were just kind of talking and mess around. Honestly, we had no feelings for each other at the time. At the time, ironically, I liked her best friend. So I was trying to get it in, with that. Um, and
And my
yeah,
best friend liked his best friend, so that was fun.
yeah, 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 right, yeah. The girl I liked, like my best friend. Yeah, it was,
Yeah.
yeah, it was a mess. We were just a bunch of dumb kids. Um, but thankfully all worked out,
Yep.
obviously. And so then we went into our second semester. That was probably end of January or something like that of 2000. Um, and then it was, we were friends. We would hang out. We had a friend group of like 5 or 6 people. We'd all hang out. And then eventually, our friends started dating,
Mhm.
and then we were kind of left on our own for a while, unsupervised. Um, and
Not really.
yeah, and we started hanging out a lot more, with each other, and what started off as a friendship became a lot more than that. Obviously, and then even before, I started liking her. I think we started liking each other by the same time. I was probably a little bit before, started liking her a little bit before, but we never said anything. But we'd hang out and we'd flirt and do all
All
those
that fun stuff.
all those silly things.
Mhm.
Um, and then finally, um, in March, on March 7th specifically, after I really knew that she liked me back, we had our determine the relationship talk. Um, we borrowed a friend's car, went up the street to the park, you know, had a little talk.
It's getting too detailed.
Oh,
Sorry.
okay. Okay. All right. Let's see. Let me start over. Okay. So then, fine. March 7th, we had a little DTR, determine the relationship talk. And I like you, you like me. Yes, yes. And then, that was it. And then pretty much we've been inseparable for ever since, really.
Well, except for the 8 months we
Oh
were
yeah,
apart.
sorry, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So we had a long distance relationship after our second semester. We were together for what, like 4 weeks maybe before this semester, 4 to 6 weeks before that ended, and then he went home to New Jersey. I went home to California. He came out for a week during the summer to visit, and then I went to Austria. That they had an affiliate campus over there, and I had wanted to go there from like the second I even knew about it, and he didn't want. He'd never really wanted to go. So even though we were dating, he stayed in Marietta, and then I went over to Austria for our third semester. So, this is the days before cell phones, and
Social
yeah.
media,
Mhm.
any of that, any other business.
Yeah. So over the summer, we were able to talk like probably almost every night. But then when I went to Austria, like I think we talked maybe 5 times
Mm-hmm.
that entire time. And, it was the whole thing. Like we both were at schools with, only a handful of payphones and you had to stand in a long line. We were dealing with,
Figure out the time
yeah, time
differences,
difference,
make sure
which
that
was like
was,
8 hours or something
yeah, I
crazy.
wasn't calling her at 2 in the morning or
Hmm.
something. And
Yeah. So
yeah, it was a different
kids these
world.
days have no idea.
Yeah, it was a different world. But we made it,
Yeah,
and it was
it
good.
was actually
Like
really good.
now, I kind of like wish I would have gone to Austria. And not only to be with her, but to experience the castle and experience
Yeah,
Europe. Would have
maybe
been
someday.
would have been
Let's.
amazing. Yeah, Lord willing, maybe one
Hmm.
of these days. But at the same time, it was really good that we were
Yeah.
not together for that time. I think we really needed that time apart. I think it really solidified a lot of things. Um, on because pretty much right when we started dating, I knew she was the one. I knew I wanted to marry her. Of course, I didn't say any of that because I didn't want to scare her off. Um, but I kept it myself, and I really felt like that's who the Lord wanted me to marry. Um, and then,
Yeah, and for me, it wasn't like I wasn't. It took me longer to figure
mhm,
that out, and really, I didn't know until you know probably halfway through the semester in Austria,
mhm,
and just that time apart was really good and really like I knew I wasn't coming back without knowing. And thankfully, God did show me. And so, yeah, by the time I came back, like we were literally inseparable.
mhm.
And I mean, we didn't see each other till the end of January,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
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 So it had been a long time, like
Yeah.
eight
A
or
good
nine
what,
months.
8 or 9 months?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that we were apart, taking out maybe the week or the couple of
Yeah.
days in between. Um, and then yeah, just phone calls, emails, all that snail mail. We wrote each other letters. Um, and so the Lord really, yeah, showed us a lot of things. And showed us
Mm-hmm.
how to be apart and still hear from the Lord. And at the time, we were just a bunch of dumb kids. We didn't
Yeah,
really
we
know
were
what we were doing.
babies.
And we definitely did not picture any of this happening 25 years later. For sure. But 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 here we are. And then after that, we got engaged that following March 7th of 2001 on our 1 year anniversary. And then we got married that November of 2001. So it was a short engagement, longer than we wanted, but that's
Felt like
okay.
an eternity.
Yeah, I felt like an eternity, but it obviously worked out. And
Mm-hmm.
then at the time, we were both working and living at the Bible College slash Conference Center. I was working landscaping at the Conference Center. She was working at kind of the
Like, yeah,
correspondence
correspondence,
school,
AV.
AV at the Bible
Mm-hmm.
College. And then we got married that November up in Paradise. So we drove up to get married up there with her family on Thanksgiving weekend. That Saturday after the 24th.
Don't recommend.
Yeah, don't recommend.
It was a
Honestly,
great idea at the time.
yeah, it was, and honestly, it worked out.
Yeah.
Like yes, there were days where it felt right on Thanksgiving Day or the day before, the day after. It was kind of hectic when we were at
It
families.
always falls somewhere in Thanksgiving
Yeah,
week.
yeah.
So,
Either we were at
yeah.
families or families were over us, and so
Mm-hmm.
we didn't really get to celebrate that day like
Mm-hmm.
super well.
Like
But
normal people do.
right, yeah. But that's okay. So March 7th was always kind of been our another anniversary that we celebrate quite a bit. So so I worked out, and then in 2003, four, four. I had a stroke, so don't we had our first child, Josiah, and then after that we had three more Bambinos, Daniel in 06.
Yep. Elias in 2009, and then Violet in 2012. So 3 boys, and our last was a girl.
Yeah, and our last was a girl. Yeah, and in between that time, we moved out to New Jersey to be with my parents, to be closer to them. Anyway,
so this was when Josiah was about a year and a half, and I was pregnant. Had just gotten pregnant with Daniel.
Yeah. So Daniel was born in Jersey. And we weren't even there a year, honestly. It was just a lot harder than we thought, for sure. It was tough. It was great living with my parents, but it was a small, old house, 1 bathroom, and there was a lot of us. So that made things difficult. And then we moved back. We moved back to the Bible College / Conference Center. Got my old job back landscaping, which was good. And then we were able to live on campus at that time, which we didn't our first year. We just lived in an apartment in town. And then we were there for quite a while. We were there from,
I think, 2007.
Was it?
Yeah. No, we moved. Let's see. Daniel was still a baby. He wasn't a year old yet. So we moved back in 2006, and we were there till 2013.
Yeah. We were there till 2013. So I worked landscaping those first couple years there, which I loved. And then a couple years into that, the director of the conference center asked me to manage the coffee shop that was on campus there, with me having zero knowledge of any of that, how to run a business, coffee, none of it. But the Lord worked it out. I learned quite a bit.
You did a great job
at the beginning, because I had to, because I didn't know what the heck I was doing. And then at the Bible College, they have a program where the students voluntarily work 8 hours a week in any given department, coffee shop being one of those departments. And I probably had anywhere between 30 to 40 students any given semester. So it was great. That was great. I love being with the students. We had to go through that same program ourselves, working in the kitchen and working landscaping, construction on campus. So it was a good tool for the students to offset the cost of tuition, because it was really cheap to go there. And it was good because they learned a trade. They learned how to do something. I had a handful of students that after that went from there to actually work at a coffee shop, Starbucks, or just a local shop or whatever. And it was awesome. I really enjoyed doing that and helping them out. And then 2013.
So we were kind of at the point where we knew our time at the Bible College was at an end. Just series of events and things that, we knew we were done there. And, around that same time, another couple from the Bible College, we didn't really know them too well, but we knew them, a little bit. And they were going out or praying about doing a church plant in Colorado, in Denver, specifically. So, we started praying about that. Really felt like, we were young, very naive. sounded exciting and you know, honestly like fun and something,
Right. A new adventure.
yeah. And we went out like I think it was spring break of
Yeah.
that year.
Mm.
They, took a handful of students and went out to kind of scout it out. And Cisco, went with them, and then I flew out with Violet for
Mm.
a few days, and we loved it out there. Really felt like was what the Lord wanted us to do,
Mm-hmm.
and so yeah, that summer in June we
Packed up
packed
all our
everything up
four kids and everything we
and moved out
had,
there. Hmm.
and moved out there.
Our oldest was probably about
10,
10 at the time, I
11,
think,
yeah.
something like that.
So yeah, that was a big move. I mean,
Hmm.
we moved from Jersey and back
Yeah.
already at that point. Um, and
That was
then
only with one kid and a
yeah,
baby.
right, yeah.
Whole.
With four kids,
Hmm.
it was a whole different deal for sure, and more stuff
Hmm.
obviously as well. Um, so it was a big move, and it
Kind of
was
a disaster from the start. I
from
mean, for us, like,
yeah,
yeah, we just went out with so little.
very
Yes,
optimistic.
yeah, yep.
Not really,
Prepared.
even though we pray, I really feel like we
We
prayed a
did.
lot,
We did.
and stuff like that. A lot of the practical
Hmm.
things weren't really taken care of ahead of
No.
time. So, a lot of those things we were like scrambling to find
A place to
a
live.
place to live because we thought we had a place set up and then it didn't work out.
Yeah.
And thankfully I had a job lined up.
Hmm.
But yeah, it was
It was wild.
yeah,
Yeah.
it was wild. It was a
From the
wild time.
start.
Yeah, from the jump. And
Yeah.
the church plant was great right at the beginning.
Hmm.
We didn't have a building as of yet, but we met in the local parks. It was kind of the summertime in Colorado. It was beautiful.
Yeah.
It was amazing. We had really sweet times of fellowship in the park and of prayer, and those really were amazing times.
Hmm.
And then eventually moved into a building, into a school in Denver, and that was good too. Especially at the beginning, it was really good. We were getting used to work, being in a building, doing all the work that entailed, setting up the chairs, breaking them down, doing all that stuff. By the end of a Sunday, we were wiped
Yeah.
and we were
So
beat.
tired every Sunday.
Every Sunday we just got home and crashed out. So it was definitely different, but it was good at the beginning, and then it did start to get a little bit more difficult for a variety of different reasons.
Yeah. We'll go into that, or just kind of more of our church,
Mhm.
um, like our personal experience with church and ministry in general. We're going to do an episode on that later. But yeah, I mean, to sum it up, like it was the best of times there. Like we absolutely had some of our,
Mhm.
most favorite memories were from that time. But it was also like the hardest and definitely like top two hardest things we've ever gone through.
Mhm.
Um, Planning a church is not for the faint of heart. It is not
Mhm.
an easy thing, and um, it felt so much like having a baby and then losing that baby after a
Right.
couple years. It was heartbreaking in every way, and we lost, like basically our entire community. I mean, not because we didn't like speak to anyone or anything like that. Like we, thankfully it didn't end like super dramatically. But you know, it was it wasn't the same, and we were like spending Christmases and holidays and everything, birthdays with everyone. We were just like a giant family, and then it all ended. And um, there was a lot of hurt and stuff. And so it wasn't the same kind of a situation.
Mm-hmm.
And so it felt like a huge, huge loss for us. And around that time that ended, some friends of ours from Bible college, actually, the wife had worked in the coffee shop
Mm-hmm.
for him. You want to take it?
Yeah, they started. She was from Colorado, from Aurora, which was actually really only a
Mm-hmm.
couple miles from where we lived, just outside of Denver. And her and her husband, Jake, started a coffee cart. Um, and they did that for a couple of years at the farmers market there in the local mall, and then the opportunity came for them to, and then to be able to open up a brick and mortar shop, and we connected with them. We kind of knew that they were out there, that we lived next to each other, and we helped them out a couple times at the farmers market there, and we really enjoyed it. And then when it came time to open up their brick and mortar, I helped them out, open that up and run it for a little bit, since I had a little bit of that experience, which was awesome. And we had a great time. I love that
Mm-hmm.
place. Legends Coffee in Aurora. If you're in the neighborhood, pop by and say what's up. And great coffee. Jake and Tabitha are amazing, just the sweetest couple. And we really had a great time. So we were there for. I quit my job, cutting trees, to do that, which is much better. Um, and we did that for a good couple of years.
Mm-hmm.
And that was awesome. That shop is still there and flourishing, and they're doing awesome. And then that was, and then in 2018, after a couple of years of doing that, we really felt like the Lord calling us back to California, but this time to Paradise, to Northern California, where Melissa was from. At that point, we hadn't really lived by family at all,
Mm-hmm.
especially with our kids. Um, at all. We had that brief stint in Jersey for not even a year, when Josiah was a baby, when Daniel was just born, and then after that we lived in Marietta, and we were kind of on our own, apart from family. Paradise was 10 hours away from where we had lived. Jersey was, of course, across the country. Um, so we really felt like we needed to be back near family, have our
Yeah.
kids grow up
And I
near
think,
their
especially after
cousins.
the loss of like our community in
Mm,
Colorado, I didn't have the greatest of childhoods. So I never, when I left Paradise, I never really wanted to go back.
mm,
Um, and it took all those years, and everything to kind of get me to the place where I was like willing and ready to do it. I really was excited to move back. I felt like I'd missed out so much on my family, and my nieces and nephews. And um, even though we lived far away, like I'm close with my sisters, and it always just was a loss. It was always hard to be away for all the holidays and birthdays and everything. And so yeah, we worked for a couple years to kind of get to the point where we, were able to move back. And that happened in the summer of 2018.
mm.
Again, when everything that we imagined was going to happen and how it was supposed to go just completely fell apart the second we
Got there.
moved. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I was living with my sister with the kids. He actually stayed in Colorado for about another month or so, working. Why to say, like, I think,
Just to
yeah.
save more money. I was waiting tables
Hmm.
alongside with working at the coffee shop. So I was making a little bit more money. We used obviously quite a bit of money to
move.
to make the move, and we wanted to save up a little bit more so we
That's
can
right.
have a place to live right away.
So, and there was a real shortage of rentals in Paradise, which we
Yes.
didn't really, we might have known, but we, again, were very optimistic. And,
Yes.
so we thought it was going to happen a lot sooner than it actually did. Yeah. So yeah, he came. So in July, he finally, we were like, okay, we're done doing this,
Yeah, being
living
apart. Yeah,
apart.
sucks.
And he jumped in we had a minivan, and he was going to drive it to California.
Yes. And then I got outside of Colorado into Wyoming, probably about 2, maybe 3 hours away. And then all of a sudden, the van transmission just blew up. I just out of nowhere. And so I was stuck on the side of the road in the middle of Cheyenne, Wyoming, in the middle of nowhere. I was kind of freaking out. And it's never happened to me, and I didn't know what to do. Eventually, and then I called Melissa, called the tow truck. They came picked up the van, basically just dropped it off at a Honda dealership, and then thankfully Jake from the coffee shop, along with our friend Fidel, they came and picked me up and drove back to Denver, and they just dropped me off at the airport. And then I just took Melissa booked me a flight from the airport to California, mm-hmm. to Sacramento. And then we met up there. So that was an ordeal that took about a day or so.
It was a couple days, I think.
Yeah, but it was something, So that was a very auspicious start to mm-hmm. Our move to Paradise. Like already, it's like it's kind of a bad sign. And then moved out there, lived with.
So yeah, we were living with my one sister. We were there for a month and a half, and then, moved in with my other sister because we still hadn't found a place. And hindsight is 2020. We all look back, and if we'd known what was coming, we would have made so much better use of that time and just enjoyed it so much more. But we didn't know what was coming, so it was very stressful, very hard. Yeah, it was pretty awful, to be honest. And so we finally got into our own place the end of September, and it was adorable. Cute white picket fence. Yes. Chickens next door would come over every morning and wreak havoc on our garden, but we loved them, and it was the cutest little cottage house place. Yeah, it was absolutely adorable. We loved it. The kids had started school. That was going really well. And we were finally feeling like we were getting on our feet. Yeah. And November 8th, so about less than 5 weeks after we moved into our house, November 8th, my birthday, the town burned down. Yes. So
yeah, I went to work that morning, pretty early in the morning, 6:30, 6:45, something like that. And I saw smoke from a distance, pretty far away. I think at that point it was like 40, 50 miles away. And it was really windy that night and that morning. I remember I really had a hard time falling asleep because it was so windy and it made so much noise. And so Paradise is up on the top of a hill, and so I came down the hill to a neighboring to the bigger town called Chico. I went down there. By the time I got there, the smoke cloud kept getting bigger. I called Melissa. I'm like, hey, just a heads up. There's a lot of smoke over here. Just kind of be careful.
And that was, he left at 6:45. I got up around 7:30. to get the kids ready for school, and pretty much the fire was already at the end of our street. I didn't know that until I left to take the kids to school, but and then I was driving. We were hearing fire trucks and seeing this massive plume of smoke, and like it was just towering over our road. And when I pulled out to drive down the road to take them, I look in the rearview mirror and there's flames in the canyon behind me. So it didn't take long for it to be 40 miles away and then right at our back door, essentially. So, needless to say, we lost everything. Everyone in my family lost everything. I think my sister's house was the only one that didn't burn, but she still lost everything, or had to make the choice to lose it all because everything was contaminated and just smoke filled. So thankfully she had pictures, which thank God, because that was the only, without her house burning and those being saved, we would have had none. We all would have, we all lost them all. It was a situation, at least for us anyway, because we were right on the canyon where the fire came in. We weren't able to grab anything. So, so that happened. And then my brother was living about an hour and a half away. So he was the only one whose house, didn't burn or was in the fire. But he, at that same time, he had a business. He owned a business, and they ended up losing their business. So we were all going through like massive loss all at one time. And it was, extremely, it was wild.
It was a lot.
It was wild. So that was the catalyst of what ended up, turning into us moving to Texas. So
yeah, for sure. Yeah, that was a tough season.
Again, that'll be another episode. We'll go into the whole story, but
yeah, for sure. We ended up moving here in 2020. So it was about 2 years after. So there's some things that happened in between.
Not quite 2 years, because it was the end of
I guess a year and a half ish.
Yeah.
So we moved in between then, and then we decided we just needed to get out. Get out of California and just
the whole point of moving back there was to be by my family, and we were never able to get back.
Scattered around everywhere. And there was no, as much as we tried, there was just no.
We did try.
Yeah, we did try. It was very, very difficult to get back to that, not to Paradise itself, because we wouldn't have done that, but to that area, because so many thousands of people lost their homes. Everybody was taking up hotels and apartments and houses, and so there was just nothing left.
And to give you an idea, like Paradise is a small town, but it was a small town of about 27,000 people. So it's not like, it wasn't a tiny town. It was like a decent sized small town, a big small town. And about, I think, less than 5% of the town made it. So that amount of people all suddenly trying to find a place to live, it was insanity. And housing was already an issue when we moved there, and that just took it to another level. So we ended up about hour and a half away, closer to where my brother was. And we did try to get back. Most of my family ended up in Chico after the fire, and God did not open that door at all. So we cut our losses and moved to Texas.
So we ended up here, and honestly, this. I think the first year was a little rough here. It was a little difficult. My younger brother, who I went to Bible college with, Carlos, him and his wife. Right now, we moved since we've been here. Right now, they live like literally 2 miles up the road from us, which has been good, you know. And her brother, um, who was living in California, he lives about an hour from us.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so we're pretty close to family now, which is nice. It's not the same, obviously, but you know, it's been a blessing to be with them, and you know, we finally found a really good church this last year and a half or so. That has been just a um, huge blessing for us.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think we've ever been a part of a church like that. You know, in all our years of being in ministry and in the Bible college and all that, this is completely different. And I really feel like this is why the Lord has us here in Texas, is for that. And so, you know, that's been amazing. And you know, all these trials and all these things that we've been through, like when we talk about them back to back like this, it sounds like we've been through it all. You know, it really sounds like we've really had a difficult time, and we have. And there's
Mm-hmm.
in between there were good times, for sure. It wasn't all bad, and it wasn't all that we just struggled and suffered for, you know, our whole marriage essentially. um you know, so we had beautiful joyous times. Our kids being born was amazing. Just learning how to be parents and just learning each other more and how to be married, and all that was really good. But you know, at the time when some of those things started happening, especially with the church plant and moving to Paradise, and just being in Colorado was really difficult. Sometimes it's really hard, if not impossible, at the time to see, you know, the light at the end of the tunnel, and to see up above, you know, your trials that you're in, the pit that you're in, that it feels like you're in, and that you can't dig yourself out of, you know. And a lot of times it's like a mosaic. You know, you can see a mosaic from a distance, and it's all made out of tile, and it's beautiful, and you know, it's a piece of art, and there's amazing drawings and stuff on there. But if you go up closer to it, a lot closer, you see a couple of tiles at a time, and it just looks like a mess. Like, who messed up this tile job? You know. And I think this last year with the stroke, and everything, I think we really were able to finally like step back, take that step back, stick our heads out of that pit, of trials, and really see, you know, that the Lord was working, that the Lord wanted to use us and wanted to use these things, and they have been for our betterment, and we've gotten closer to the Lord, because of it. I know for me there was a little bit of a bitterness and resentment, you know, at the beginning, especially, you know, after the fire. It was tough. There was a lot of uncertainty, you know, not knowing what the heck we were gonna do, where we're gonna go, why this happened. You know, a lot of the same questions we asked, after the stroke as well. You know, um, but I think really that the Lord, has shown us a lot of things. You know, we really had a good chance to seek Him, and to really see other believers really, seek Him, and really see His Spirit move, in the church we're in now, and in just the people that are there, that have been so kind and loving and gracious to us. You know, so I know that a lot of times it's difficult. Some people, you know, some of you may be going through a trial right now. Some of you have gone through trials, and you're finding feel like you're out of it. For some people, they've gone through trials for years, decades even sometimes. And I think I know that it's really difficult to go through those things and to wonder why this is happening and why God is allowing this to happen. And we had a lot of those same thoughts and feelings as well. But
And it's hard to see the big picture when you're
mhm,
in the middle of it and going through those things. And um, you know, for us, yeah, every time, a big thing happened, it was, I think, yeah, like he was saying, like maybe with the exception of the stroke, yeah, you're just like why is this happening, Lord? Like why? Like you can't see what the purpose is. You can't see how this is going to turn out for your good, or um like what he's doing, um but then when you are able to be outside of that, on the other side of it, for a certain amount of time, you can look back and see, all those things had to happen to bring you where you are
mhm,
today. And I think, for us, that's definitely rung true. And for some weird reason, like I remember in the ICU, kind of just knowing that, like I knew God was, it felt very much like the end, very much like this was the death of everything that we had spent our whole lives working for, um, doing, and and it was all gone, um, and this snap of a finger, and somehow I just knew like it was not that was not the case. Like
mhm,
God had a purpose in all of this. All of the things that we had gone through were leading up to that moment, and I think, yeah, after you have gone through, a series of events and big things, and you survive them, you can, I don't know, you just know like it's easy. It gets easier and easier to know like it's going to be okay.
mhm,
It's going to work out. God has never, in all of these things, He's never abandoned us. He's never let us down. Like, I mean,
mhm,
yes, we went through a lot. There's people who have gone through much harder things, for sure. We don't want to pretend like we've experienced the hardest things,
right, right,
but you know, we've definitely gone through some things, and he's always proved himself faithful every time. So if you are in the middle, in the thick of it, just like look back on your life and choose to see where he has proven himself faithful. And if you have to repeat those things over and over in your mind until you believe it, I highly recommend doing that, because it's a whole different thing going through. We were not in the best place when the fire happened, spiritually, and this has been a world of a difference.
mhm,
You know, Thankfully, we had just started coming back to a good place, with the Lord and spiritually, when the stroke happened. And we were even talking about that the other day. Like if it had happened even a year
mhm,
earlier, like I don't know how we would have handled it. I don't know um, how I would have handled it. It could have very well completely wrecked me spiritually, and instead the opposite happened. Like it
mhm,
brought me to such a solid, strong place with the Lord, like stronger than it's ever been. And by His grace, that I can say that. But um, yeah, I don't remember what I was going with all that, but
yeah, for sure. I mean, that's the thing. In a lot of these situations, you can choose
mm-hmm.
to get bitter or better, as
Mm-hmm.
one pastor says, through these trials, and, after the church thing and the car and paradise, I was a little bit bitter. I'm not gonna lie. It was difficult. I didn't understand what the heck was going on. Um, and even for a little bit while we were here, I still was kind of like a little bit lost, you can say. And thank God, we were getting to that better place, and we found this church before the stroke happened. Because, like Melissa was saying, I don't know where we would be, what would we be doing or thinking if we were in that different place. So I know that sometimes things are difficult. They just are. Um, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. Um, and it's you don't understand why things are happening, or why this is happening to you, or you feel like God is picking on you, or um, you don't deserve this. I mean, in reality, I guess we do in a way, deserve some of the things that are coming to us. But like, God ultimately has a plan in it, and He has a purpose, and it's for His glory, and it's for our betterment as well, and it's for us to grow closer to Him. And sometimes it is difficult to see that. But we've been through a handful of things, of difficult things, and we are blessed and fortunate to be able to come out on the other side of it and say that we are better. That our relationship with each other, with the Lord, with our kids, with the people of our church is so much better than it was before. And so we just want to say this story of us, not to lift ourselves up and show people how awesome or how cute of a couple we are, or whatever the case may be, but and just to show like how faithful the Lord is and has been in our lives through all these different things. And I hope that you guys can watch and listen and just walk away that with that hope that the Lord is doing something amazing and awesome in your life. And you may not see it at the time, but He really wants to bless you. He really loves you. He really wants to use you, um, and use these things that you're going through to be a testimony similar to what we're doing um, right now. And so that's our hope, is that you may be filled with that peace and that joy, and that hope, just knowing that the Lord is working in and through you, and then through these trials and difficulties that you're going through.
Yep. So that's all we have for today. We'll be back next week, Monday at 3 p.m.
Yep.
So hope you have a great day. Don't forget to do all the YouTube and
Like,
podcast
comment,
stuff.
share, subscribe,
Yep,
all that good
yeah.
stuff.
So.
And we'll be here maybe for yeah, and
Yep.
we'll be here. Yeah. Thank you guys. Love you. We'll see you soon.
Talk to you later.
Bye.